Welcome to US Briefing. Swing Low Sweet Chariot meaning and lyrics behind controversial song. The Independent. The Rugby Football Union, RFU, has said that it will review the historical context and educate fans on the origins of the song Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, which has been sung by England rugby fans for decades. The song, originally a spiritual sung by African American slaves, has been adopted by England fans as an anthem. The RFU has a working group in place to promote diversity and inclusion within the sport. Mary Beard on politicians as performers. The Guardian. The Roman Emperor Nero was known for his love of acting, often performing in public shows and taking on lead roles. He even had masks made that aped his own recognizable features, blurring the boundary between himself and the characters he portrayed. These stories of Nero's passion for acting reflect broader debates and anxieties about politics, power, and the role of the emperor. They raise questions about the authenticity of leaders and the extent to which political systems are nothing more than a charade. Similarly, in today's world, we often question the genuineness of our leaders and wonder whether they are simply reading lines from a script or engaging in convenient fictions. The anecdotes about Nero also highlight the difficulty of distinguishing between the emperor and his stage characters, blurring the line between real politics and play acting. The stories of Nero's performances and his interaction with the audience reveal a deeper truth about the nature of Roman autocracy. It was always hard to tell an emperor from an actor. These anecdotes serve as a reminder that rulers and politicians may have to be good actors, but they also expose the nightmare that citizens may discover their leaders are nothing more than actors, making it impossible to trust what they say. Feed humans first. Could International Biofuels Alliance lead to more hunger? South China Morning Post. The launch of an international biofuels collaboration at the G20 summit in India has divided environmentalists, who debate whether its use will exacerbate food shortages and damage climate mitigation efforts. The Global Biofuels Alliance, GBA, aims to boost global efforts to meet net zero goals by accelerating the use of biofuels, which can be produced quickly from biomass rather than through natural fossil fuel processes. Critics argue that increased use of biofuels could lead to the diversion of crops for fuel, exacerbating food shortages and deforestation, and suggest that the focus should instead be on renewable energy production. They suggest that biofuel production should be driven by market price, rather than subsidies or mandates. However, other analysts argue that biofuels can help to reduce dependence on fossil fuels in the short to medium term. Highly import-dependent nations, such as India, which imports 85% of its oil and 50% of its natural gas needs, could partially replace fossil fuels with biofuels and enhance energy security. An IEEFA report suggests that generating solar energy to recharge electric vehicles would be a more efficient use of land than growing crops for biofuels. Labour, you can trust us on defence. We are committed to NATO and US leadership. Telegraph. Members of the UK's Labour Party are seeking to strengthen connections with the US Democratic Party and the Biden administration ahead of the next general election. Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy and Shadow Defense Secretary John Healey recently visited Washington, D.C., to promote a new Labour foreign and defense policy. The trip aimed to demonstrate the parties' commitment to the transatlantic relationship and its support for the US and UK's supply of arms and aid to Ukraine. The visit followed a series of announcements aligning Labour policies with those of the Biden administration, including a pledge to launch a major funding program for decarbonization technology. Is the housing crisis pricing out the skilled newcomers Canada wants to attract? CBC. The rising cost of living in Canada is causing concern among newcomers, with many immigrants regretting their decision to move to the country. Inflation is on the rise, and the cost of rent and mortgages is increasing, creating an affordable housing crisis across the country. At the same time, the Canadian government has increased immigration targets, aiming to bring in 500,000 permanent residents per year by 2025. This influx of immigrants, along with migrant workers and international students, is contributing to the high demand for housing. Highly skilled immigrants may start to reconsider moving to Canada if the housing crisis does not improve. Despite the challenges, Immigration Minister Mark Miller stated that the demand to come to Canada remains high. However, critics argue that more needs to be done to tie immigration to the current economic realities and address the housing shortfall. The Canadian government acknowledges the need to improve the immigration system and digitize the process, but believes the housing crisis is not the fault of immigrants. Instead, they blame underfunding and the reliance on private actors for housing development. Democrats are cruel to pretend that Joe Biden is fine. Telegraph. U.S. President Joe Biden has once again made an embarrassing gaffe, repeating the same story almost word for word just minutes apart during a speech at a campaign reception in Manhattan. The incident has raised concerns about the 80-year-old president's age and ability to serve. This comes after a similar slip-up during his United Nations General Assembly address, where he stumbled while talking about the US and China working together on accelerating the climate crisis. Some are questioning the wisdom of allowing this to continue and are calling for Biden to retire. How a high-end cruise does wellness, from caviar spaghetti to in-suite pampering. Telegraph. Cruise company Silver Sea is offering its passengers a wellness experience called Odium, which is designed to encourage balanced indulgence, pampering and pleasure over sacrifice and delayed gratification. The package includes spa treatments, fitness facilities and an all-hours food and beverage menu. Silver Sea won the Best Small Ship Ocean Cruise Line in the 2023 Telegraph Travel Awards. MPs hope Zelensky's visit counters creeping fatigue over cost of war support. CBC. Canadian MPs have expressed concerns about waning public support for Ukraine's defense efforts. Many MPs fear that war fatigue is causing interest in the conflict to decline among their constituents. To counter this, they hope that President Volodymyr Zelensky's two-day visit to Canada will help change public opinion and maintain support for Ukraine. Zelensky delivered an impassioned speech to the Canadian Parliament, urging Western allies to continue supporting Ukraine until Russia is defeated. The Canadian government has committed over $9.5 billion in support to Ukraine since 2022. Senator Bob Menendez steps down as committee chair after indictment. The Independent. U.S. Senator Robert Menendez has temporarily stepped down from his role as head of the influential Foreign Relations Committee as calls for his resignation grow following bribery charges. Menendez and his wife have been charged with taking bribes from 3 New Jersey businessmen. The allegations have prompted calls for his resignation as a senator, with Democrats concerned over their chances of keeping their slim majority in the U.S. Senate in next year's elections. Menendez has refused to resign from his New Jersey seat but later stepped down temporarily from his role as chairman of the Senate's Foreign Relations Committee until the case is resolved. Ukraine live briefing, missiles strike Russia's Black Sea Fleet HQ, Zelensky visits Toronto. Washington Post. Ukraine's special forces claimed on Telegram early Saturday that dozens were killed and wounded in the strike on Russia's Black Sea Fleet headquarters in occupied Crimea on Friday, including top officials. The strike was precisely timed to hit during a meeting of the fleet's leadership, the Post said. A geolocated video, verified by Storyful and confirmed by the Washington Post, showed smoke rising from the building in Sevastopol, a strategic target that was thought to be well defended. It is the latest attack on Russian military infrastructure throughout the peninsula, which was illegally annexed in 2014. Pakistan's prime minister says manipulation of coming elections by military is absolutely absurd. The Toronto Star. Pakistan's interim prime minister, Anwar ul-Haq Kakar, has dismissed concerns that the country's military would manipulate the upcoming parliamentary elections to prevent Imran Khan's party from winning. Kakar stated that it is the election commission that will be conducting the vote, not the military, and that Khan himself appointed the commission's chief. The election, which was originally scheduled for November, has been delayed until the last week of January due to political turmoil and the country's economic and environmental crises. Kakar, who was chosen as caretaker prime minister to oversee the elections, said that his government will provide all necessary assistance for a fair election. He also stated that he would not interfere with the judiciary and that Khan's conviction would not be overturned to allow him to run in the elections. Kakar denied allegations of de facto military rule in Pakistan and said that the civilian institutions in the country need to improve rather than weaken the military. He also criticized India's treatment of Kashmir and called for the right to self-determination for the Kashmiri people. Pakistan's prime minister says manipulation of coming elections by military is absolutely absurd. Associated Press. Pakistan's interim prime minister, Anwar ul-Haq Kakar, has dismissed concerns that the military would manipulate the upcoming parliamentary elections to prevent the victory of jailed former Premier Imran Khan's party. Kakar stated that the elections would be conducted by the Election Commission and not the military, and that Khan had appointed the commission's chief, so there was no reason for him to turn against him. The elections were initially scheduled for November but will now take place in the last week of January due to delays caused by the country's political turmoil and economic crisis. Kakar also addressed the issue of civil-military relations in Pakistan, stating that he believed the imbalance was due to the deterioration of civilian institutions rather than the strength of the military. He emphasized the need to gradually improve the performance of civilian institutions to solve the country's problems. Kakar also discussed the situation in Kashmir, calling for the right to self-determination for the people of Kashmir and criticizing India for denying them that right. F1 Grid, starting positions for Japanese Grand Prix. The Independent. Max Verstappen is looking to bounce back in Japan this weekend after his incredible 10-race F1 win streak ended in Singapore following Carlos Sainz's thrilling victory. The Ferrari driver held off Lando Norris, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton in the closing stages to claim his second Formula One victory and the first non-Red Bull win since Russell's triumph for Mercedes in Brazil last November. Norris earned the 9th podium of his career after coming home second, while Russell will be eager to get back in the cockpit after a last-lap crash saw him lose a spot on the podium, taken by Hamilton. Verstappen finished 5th, with Charles Leclerc 4th. AI, help or hindrance in fight against disinformation? Deutsche Welle. Artificial intelligence, AI, can be used to manipulate people's emotions and decisions, warned philosopher Claudia Paganini during a discussion on the dangers and benefits of AI in the media. Paganini argued that journalism needs to develop greater transparency to counteract the manipulative effects of AI, and that transparency is the new truthfulness. German parliamentary representatives at the discussion agreed that error culture and technology assessment are required to address the risks of AI, and called for EU regulations to be adopted by US tech companies. When does the Japanese Grand Prix start and how can I watch? The Independent. Max Verstappen is looking to bounce back at the Japanese Grand Prix after his 10-race winning streak was ended by Carlos Sainz in Singapore. Sainz held off Lando Norris, George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton to claim his second Formula One victory, with Verstappen finishing 5th. Verstappen is currently leading the driver standings with 374 points, while Red Bull is leading the Constructors' Championship with 597 points. The Japanese Grand Prix will be broadcast live on Sky Sports F1 and Sky Sports Main Event in the UK and Ireland. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.